annual Automation Fair.
Expanding human possibility, expanding human imagination on the back of digital transformation. Now, let's start at the beginning.
Rockwell Automation is closest to the source of enormously valuable data that comes from industrial applications.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this live Rock Studios broadcast. My name is Keith Larson, editor-in-chief of Control Magazine and ControlGlobal.com. Over the past 15 years now, process automation has become an increasingly important part of Automation Fair in the form of the Process Solutions User Group meeting, traditionally held in the 2 days before the Automation Fair event. I should know, I don't think I've missed one yet. And while PSUG went virtual like everything else this year, one silver lining is that Rockwell Automation has pulled together a curated playlist of the most popular and informative process solutions sessions given as part of Automation Fair at Home for you to explore at your leisure. It's one of 6 different playlists of Automation Fair content and can be accessed via the URL shown in the video frame, the nav bar at automationfair.com, or just Google Process Flow AFAH, and that'll get you there too. Joining me to discuss some of the central themes and announcements made at this virtual edition of PSUG is Dave Rapini, Plant PDX Business Manager for Rockwell Automation. Welcome, Dave, and thank you for taking the time to join me today.
Thanks, Keith. Glad to be here.
Yeah, real pleasure. First off, big highlight of this past PSUG meeting was Plant PDX Release 5, the latest release of Rockwell's DCS. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's new in this latest release and what differentiators and users should be aware of?
Yeah, so 5.0 is a really big release for us. It's really emphasizing that modern DCS message that we're always talking about. So it's really, in that DCS space, we are really a disruptor to that market. We have a unique position of how we come to market. Our scaling levers are different than our competitors. Our platform is much more open than most common DCSs. So it's very flexible, very scalable solution compared to others. And 5.0 just kind of it reinforces that and adds a little more depth to that with a bunch of open technologies leveraging a lot of the lifecycle content, so you can get better management of the long-term experience of the control system and keeping it maintained and keeping it running cleanly. As well as helping with that digital transformation that we're always pushing very heavily on.
Okay, that makes sense. Obviously, Covid-19 disrupted Automation Fair, but how did it impact how Rockwell Automation is helping your customers, particularly the end user community?
Yeah, Covid-19, obviously there's some tactical things that are brought to the table for Rockwell. Our big customers were outside Tiva and Life Science, doing tons of modular kind of personalized medicine, even the materials to create masks, decontamination chambers, things like that. We're doing tons of work there, more than before. But that's kind of the tactical stuff. The real big thing we're really seeing a change on is the mobile access. So being able to connect with a mobile device, you don't want to put 10 operators in a control room together anymore. So having that flexibility to be mobile, we've always had that support in Plant PX, but what we're seeing now is more and more people trying to get things like Thin Manager up and running, Vuforia Chalk, things that can let them do their jobs better without having to be concentrated into a single area for maintenance and operations. So we see a lot of an uptick in that space.
Yeah, certainly has accelerated the rate of change, including virtual and remote support, as you were saying. How is it really, you're certainly connecting also a lot more remote as well as mobile users, but that inevitably leads to questions about cybersecurity. How is Plant PX 5.0 making sure that your end user customers are secure?
Yeah, that's the point. So a lot of our customer base are asking those questions. So Plant PX 5.0 really came to the table hard with IEC standard 62443, and we're pushing really hard on that as the de facto standard for cybersecurity. So we have about 4 certifications now there in that standard. One of the biggest ones is we have a 3-3 certification on the reference architecture. So if you do 62443 3-3 certification, it means the reference architecture has been approved by TÜV. It's known to be cyber secure, and it gives you that baseline starting point, so you know that you've got a good installed secure system. And we're starting to see that stuff starting to show up in specs, even so bid specs, things like that. A lot of customers are saying thou shalt follow this standard and have at least some type of certification on your architecture to prove that you've got that cybersecurity stuff covered.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. They'd rather know going in that it's met those standards rather than having to do it themselves.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. What about a little bit closer look at some of the specific benefits around Plant PX5? First, I know you added some new process controllers to the Logic family. Can you talk a little bit about what was the reason for these innovations, and what benefits do they really bring to the user community?
Yeah, so that new controller is really part of the family. So don't think about that as a new platform. It's really part of Logic's family. So it still has that modern DCS message of a plant-wide control, plant-wide solution, which is really where we think the market is going. A common unified architecture to do balance of plant and the core content. And this controller is part of that family. You know, the code's the same, the architecture is the same from a library perspective as what shows up on a skid. So that's still there. That's still part of that family. But what we did do in this controller is we've really expanded the capabilities of what it can do when it's used as part of a bigger system. So it gives you a lot of that pre-built content to make it much more process focused, much more like the default on that controller, for example, when you start it up, look and feel much more tailored specifically to process. So it's more of a purpose-built solution. While it still has that same look and feel of Logic and program with the same environments and same maintenance activities, it does have that process look and feel. And by the way, those controllers have a lot of the process content around conformal coding, around extended temperatures, just to make sure that they cover those harsher environments that some of the process applications don't.
I also noticed that they have now native process instructions embedded in the controller firmware versus software. Why is this embedded approach so important?
Yeah, so the market, the process market in general, was really trying to push for a low code, no code mentality, right? Yeah, you'll hear those buzzwords from us and our competitors, right? So it's all about custom code is always hard to maintain, always hard to keep going. It's much better if you can just have something that you're configuring and just setting up. So those process objects embedded in the controller means that you can start focusing on where your value, where an end user value is. You don't have to worry about how to control a pump or how to control a motor, how to run a valve. Those kinds of process functions, everybody does them. They're all common. Nobody's getting rich because their pump control is better than somebody else's pump control, right? Right. So making those native in the controller, it means you just do the configuration, you drop the object in, you get all the alarming system, you get all the content built along with it through configuration dialogues and not coding. And then you can focus all your energy on where your value add is. If you're an oil gas guy, you've probably got projects you've been wanting to do but don't have the time to do. These offer up that flexibility so you can spend time on other places where your energy is better served.
That makes a lot of sense, really does. What about, you kind of alluded to this on the project development side. Are there other things that you've done to help streamline the development engineer's job as well?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of the work that people do on control code is diagnostics. This new controller has got diagnostics built in. So you just subscribe to devices and they tell you those alarms, those diagnostics, those hardware failures all show up on maintenance screens on the HMI without any code, without any setup. It just works. Things like alarming systems, all of that content now, they're embedded in those objects I talked about. When you drop an object in, you get all the alarms. And all those alarms just propagate up the stack without you having to do anything on the HMI. There's no work there. It's just the alarming system just works out of the box. So a lot of that productivity that you had to spend time coding databases, making sure stuff aligned, kind of goes away with the Plant PX5 release, and that's where the market's really going heavily.
Yeah. Speaking of areas where the market is going, digital transformation and Rockwell Automation's vision of the connected enterprise are certainly key activity areas. You mentioned early on talking about digital transformation. Can you talk a little bit more about how Plant PDX 5.0 is helping to enable customers on their digital journeys?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of the Plant PX content in 5.0, we always tend to talk a lot about design tools and making design productivity, but where the real value for end users is in that digital transformation, right? And being able to do complex analytics, improve efficiency, reduce downtime over the 20-year life cycle. That's where the real value is. And we're doing a lot of work in that space now. So because the Plant PX objects, those pumps, those valves, those core components are part of a known data structure, it means that we can now build templates, AI templates, augmented reality templates, maintenance templates of things that align with those data structures, so that you don't have custom content anymore for doing those complicated analytics, those complicated reporting. That stuff is just easy to build now because it's the same in every facility. It's the same in every Plant PX installation. It doesn't have that customization. You have to worry about how somebody designed some tags. So, some of the templates we built this release with PTC, you can walk up with an iPad, hit a barcode on a pump, and we'll render the graphics for you for that pump and show you what the current status is of that without you having to do a lot of work to make that happen. And that's just because of that consistency that we bring to the table in that release.
Yeah, that's a powerful feature to have it more automatic than a lot of heavy lifting that it historically has required, no doubt.
And the reusability is just huge, right? Being able to reuse the same content over and over.
Yeah, so if you have a standard template for how you want a pump to be, you can reuse that from application to application. Makes sense. Speaking of what customers are focusing a lot of effort on, Lifecycle is certainly a key initiative. Can you tell me a little bit about how Rockwell Automation is addressing that specifically with some of your process industry customers?
Yeah, definitely. One of the big things we talk about being a market disruptor, one of the big things that Rockwell brings to the table is our system's very modular, or very what we call evergreen. And what that means is if you want to take advantage of a new feature or new functionality in a controller or in a historian, you don't have to upgrade the entire system. You just upgrade that component. And that component now has a well-defined interface, well-defined API, so that the rest of the system still talks to it, still works without having to do the upgrade. Always been a big competitive advantage for us. So that's huge in the terms of just doing the upgrades and taking advantage of new technologies. Being able to upgrade the system in general because the objects are in firmware now, to take advantage of a new system release, it's a firmware flashing activity, not a coding one. And that goes back to our no code, low code thing. So if you do want to take advantage of a new release, you can do that very easily. And then the last big thing that's in this last release is the system ID concept. So now every installed Plant PX system gets a system identifier with inventory around what's installed there, so that we can give you lifecycle service information around, is there part obsolescence coming up down the road? Is there a security patch or a vulnerability or an anomaly that you need to look at? So that kind of system ID gives you that capability of Rockwell being able to provide you with context around upgrades. So that's all in this release too. So big advantage for life.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Release 5 was certainly a central topic of discussion, automation for Fair at Home. But can you maybe walk me through a little bit more what else was in the process flow playlist? I mean, it wasn't just Plant PX 5. There must have been something else going on as well. Any other things that made the cut for the playlist?
Yeah, definitely. So, we do emphasize a lot of our partner content. So things like operator training systems, things like alarming, like alarm analytics and how to do alarm management with some of our partners in our content and making that very clean. ISA 101, there's sessions on ISA 101 and knowing how to apply like human factors to your displays and the process on making that stuff go clean. And we talked a little bit about cybersecurity. There's a ton of sessions on cybersecurity also that have a lot of value to walk you through not just the basics, but also some of the tactical things to do to get your cybersecurity certifications, or just at least make sure your system's pretty robust. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of interesting content to take a look at.
Okay, great. So just to review, everybody out there, if you want to take a look at a deeper dive into this process flow playlist, you can go to the URL that you see in the frame of the video. You can go to the automationfair.com website, and you should see the process flow playlist displayed there. Or if you space out, you can just Google process flow AFAH, and it'll get you there as well. Dave, I really want to thank you again so much for taking the time to share your thoughts and perspectives today.
Thanks, Keith. I appreciate being here.
And of course, I'd like to thank all of you at your homes, your offices, or wherever else you might be joining us today. This is Keith Larson, editor of Control Magazine, controlglobal.com. Signing off for now. Take care and stay safe. Until next time.